welcome to the second episode of Talks with the Elders. This series is very much focused on deep conversations with those who have years of experience behind them that walk their talk, and that one could definitely call an elder in their community. So today we're chatting about Indigenous presence, and not in the way that society likes to go about it, where it's like, oh, it's in the past tense, and these people aren't around anymore. So we're not talking about it as history. We're talking about actual living people, living culture, living lineage. And I'm joined by Lauren Gratenstein. Lauren joined us last month for our colonization episode with Q Beckett. Lauren is an Apache woman, mother, and a lifelong learner who brings together intuition, ritual, and grounded practicality in both her personal and professional life. She raises her children with intention, rooted in culture, creativity, and everyday rhythms, while also working professionally as an accountant and financial strategist who helps families and entrepreneurs build clarity, security, and long-term sustainability. We're very much having the conversation around Indigenous people and the fact that Indigenous people are still here. And we're obviously Indigenous culture worldwide. Each continent has its original people. Lauren will be talking more specifically from American Indigenous culture. Yeah. But yeah, this is very much a much needed conversation. So we're going to dive straight into the first talking point. And Lauren, I want to hear from you. What do those words mean for you? We are still here. In everyday terms for you, what does that term mean for you?
So the "We Are Still Here" is something that you might call it like a campaign, and it's because specifically in America, I think because it's such a young country, and when we think about America, we usually think about immigrants because it's the land of hope, the land of the free, and all of that. So we say America was built on immigrants, and that's been the big story for a long time, like the past 100 years or whatever. And we've glamorized the cowboys and Indian story.
Mm.
And even now, like in modern times, there's less and less of those stories. They're kind of picking back up with things like Yellowstone, which is very dramatic, um, but it's still kind of thought of as something that happened in the past. And when you see these stories of cowboys and Indians, it's usually the cowboys have defeated the Indians. And so since all of these Indians have been defeated psychologically in our minds, they must not really exist. And then when you walk through America, you don't, there's not like this huge presence. Like if you look at any other community in any large city, there's a huge African population, a huge Asian population, a huge Latin population, European population, and there may or may not even be a Native American population. And if you look at any kind of like statistics or anything, like we're always at like 1% or like less than 1%, unless you're in areas like Arizona or the Four Corners where there's still like a lot of tribes and stuff happening. But that's because colonization kind of like hit them later. So they had a little bit more time to figure things out for themselves. But the first 13 colonies, the East Coast, it was kind of like not so much. And then there's like just these pockets of history when we think of it, like Thanksgiving happened, maybe the Trail of Tears happened in your mind, then the Cowboys and Indians happened, and now we're here in modern times. And so We Are Still Here is just that reminder that even though you may not see us in your everyday life, we're still part of the fabric of America. And we want to be sitting at the table when it comes to talking about America and the future of America and and we want to be considered. I think that's the
Mm.
big, like the consideration. You never hear politicians talk about what it means, like how are they're like they're not even considering our population unless it is in one of those larger states where the vote it might be bigger. So like Arizona, California, New Mexico, you know, Nevada, that's like it, like Colorado, like whatever, there's this like pocket, but it's like you never here in the Carolinas, they're never like, we're really looking to make sure that we are making the Native American population happy, and we're not really including them in our demographics or our conversation, or, they're not top of the line and their ideas don't matter as much. But
Mm.
we feel like nobody cares more about this land than us. We should be the first people that you come to if you really do care about America.
I think you put that so beautifully that and you're spot on. I mean, who knows the land better than the original people from the land? I mean, Indigenous America, you were the original custodians to the land. You lived with the land, you honored the land. And there's a clear, just blatant disrespect towards the land now. And then on top of that, being shoved to one side, and like what you think and what you say doesn't actually matter. Um, I saw a post not too long ago. A gentleman was discussing the film Last of the Mohicans,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that issue with Hollywood, like reinforcing that idea of Indigenous Americas in the past. These people don't exist anymore. Like you said with the cowboys and Indians, it was the obliteration of these people. They're gone. Um, and I think where we can shift into here is that misidentification and that you're just not recognized at all. And it happens routinely, this kind of stuff. I mean, you've spoken to me about it where you get misidentified as you're from Latin America, or you're from Mexico, or you're from this, but like you're not. You were born and raised in Arizona, or Colorado or South Carolina, like that's where you're from. I believe your family, we've chatted about it, is Texas. So chat to me a bit more about that misidentification and the impacts of that and not being recognized.
Right. So, when we had that discussion about misidentification, it was specifically with the missing and murdered Indigenous women and plus pluses. So, and it's just because nobody, not nobody, that's a broad statement. Because a lot of people don't have a sense of what a Native American is outside of Hollywood, then they don't know what they're looking at or what they're looking for. So when there are bodies or whatever to be identified, we're usually misrepresented by either a Latin or an Asian race, because there's so many like colors and sizes and shapes depending on like where you're from, or how you've mixed and other things like that. And like we are the brown rainbow in our family specifically. And we all kind of look like a different tribe because we're mixed with different tribes. So we can see it in our families because we know what these people look like in all of these different tribes. So we can identify it for ourselves, but there's just not that same type of understanding, because there's I mean there's such a rabbit hole to go down, right? So most of the time, like even when we're talking about westerns, like I think the most famous Indian in Hollywood was an Italian. You know what I mean? So he wasn't even Indian. So like what are we looking at here? There's a Pocahontas cartoon everywhere. She's a cartoon. She's not a person. What does she look like? How tall was she? Was she fat? Was she slender? Are all Native Americans fat and slender, or but no, like, and we can identify easily, like, you're from this region based on these certain physical appearances, but other people, they just wouldn't even know the difference. It's kind of like, we joke around like white people all look the same. I mean, it's not true, but it's just like, just to say that, but you know, so I don't, if you really dig deep and understand how these things came to be, it's not shocking that we're at this place that we are. There was so many things that happened that were driven by the government to shape things the way that they are. Like, specifically, first it was conquer, then it was eradicate, and then it was assimilate, and there were just all of these projects and programs and looking the other way, and all of these things that have brought us to where we are today. So it wasn't happenstance. It wasn't, people aren't at this place of like, we don't understand what a Native American is because of them. There was specific things put in place so that it would arrive at this. And we couldn't be identified, because if we're not identified by other people, then we will assimilate easier. If we assimilate easier, then we don't have any, identity to this land. Then we don't have a claim to the land. Then we are not a problem for for the government. And I'm not saying that America is a bad government. Governments have their initiatives and what they need to do to have a strong government. But we as people have pushed back against that as much as we can. Kind of like trying to fight with the one hand behind our back.
Hmm. And that's how do we educate ourselves? I mean, obviously I'm an immigrant that lives here. So I'm going to learn everything that I can about the country that I'm in. But I mean, that's me, and I love to learn. But for the average American person, where do they even start with trying to figure that out?
Yeah, so that's a really multi-level question, because there are a lot of barriers to even wanting to learn, because
Mm,
our so much of what we had has been taken from us and assimilated and taken over. What's the word? I'm
mm.
looking for the word. There's a word. Not
Yes.
assimilated, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Appropriated.
appropriated. That's the word. Thank you for English. It's my second language. um yeah, appropriated. So we're not, so number one, like, we want to share with you, but we're not gonna, like, we want you to understand us, but we're not gonna tell you anything. Like, we want to be seen, but don't see too much, because we don't want you to take anything from us. So
Mm,
there's so much of that where, like, we want all of this, but we also, because it's not always treated with respect,
mm,
we still kind of like hold on to certain things as our own for ourselves. So it's kind of difficult. It's not fair. Let's just put it that way. It's not fair. Like, even if you want to learn everything, like, being accepted into invited into learning each culture would be its own journey. And there are over 500 tribes. So we're talking
mm,
about, like, you're not learning about American Indians. You're learning about very different, communities that are
mm,
that do everything different based on, their journeys, their lineage, where they live, what resources they have, what stories have come to them. Because not all, everyone has their own story, because their medicine people got different information, and it's for them, and they're the holders of that medicine. Not It's not for everyone. We can't all eat the same. Well, we can, but, like, we all have our own rules, what we eat and what we don't eat, and what we use and what we burn, and all of that. It's all dependent on, like, so many different things that it is difficult. So I don't think that it's like the knowledge so much that's important to us. I think it's more of just the recognition. And I use the word
mm,
consideration. And I think those are the two things. Like, if you could just say, like, hey, I recognize and I want to consider you all in this story of America, and I want you to participate and be a part of it. Like, we want to invite you in to this conversation as you are, and respect and appreciate what you're saying for where you come from. I think that's more of like the heart of it all. Not, you don't need to know like how I worship and what I eat and how I live unless you want to know me really well, right? But
Yes.
I do feel like it matters. And right now it's kind of like the other way, where culture and everything from America is coming into our communities and our stuff is not coming out. So we are being assimilated generation by generation. And I don't know, like, each generation has its own story and its own mission and whatever. But for me, I think it's sad, but I don't know if that's the truth. You know, we all have our own period of whatever, and maybe this is the period of assimilation. Like, I don't know. Like, who am I to say? But I talked about him I talked about him forever. The poet and singer and writer John Trudell. He has, if you haven't listened to his um stuff, you should, because I think he has a good handle um on like a really strong connection with people and earth, right? And like who we are. So he has this quote that he said, and it's not just a quote, but it's part of his writings, that we're not Indian, we're not Native American, we're older than both concepts. We are the people, we are the human beings. And that goes even beyond this conversation about like where we are now in America and whatever. That goes like into like before we even had countries, right? And all of that stuff. So when I think about each tribe, let's say, of people on the earth, I feel like in this hemisphere that we are the closest thing to remembering what it's like to live in harmony with the earth, where our biorhythms, our daily life, our everything was not connected to just each other, but it was connected to everything around us. And that's the part that makes me sad about the future, that my great great grandkids may not have that intuition of, I just need to go outside and sit under the tree.
Mm.
You know, and they might decide I need to go to ChatGPT and talk to them about my mental health. Like, those are two very different kind of ways of thinking about things. So I that to me, that's that knowing that you have inside, and you probably understand this really well being from where you're from. But the first orientation that we have is to the world around, like the world around us, the real world, and not this manufactured world. And I stay connected to that. I imagine it. I fantasize about what life would look like if we didn't have so much of this stuff around us all the time. But I also appreciate and I understand the world that we do live in. So that walking in two worlds is definitely like two different things. But I would like to be able to have more conversations with people about my perspective because I'm Native American. It's going to be different than another American's. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think a lot of us do run into that. There's always this underlying feeling that we're not the same, you know.
Yes. I think the words that you shared were really helpful. That recognition and consideration. There isn't the expectation to learn about all 500 tribes that are here. I mean, that would take a lifetime to learn all of that. And I think people get really caught up in the glamorized version of Native America. Um, everybody has the headdresses and the feathers. That's what everybody looks like. And everybody wants to wear those things and have those things and have the dream catchers and
Because they're so
the feathered
pretty.
earrings and all the thing. Well, that's it. They're swept up in the idea of these things. And it's have not access to the knowledge that you have, but also um have the recognition that these are actual people, like living, breathing mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, aunties, uncles. These are living people that get up and go to regular jobs. They're your neighbors. They're the people that stand behind you in the grocery store. It could be the person at the checkout counter. These are people that are here in everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And having that level of recognition and that level of consideration that America is not a white country. Right? America is far from being a white country. If anything, it's vastly multicultural because you
Yeah.
have all these immigrants that have come in. You have the diversity from Native America. Um, so I think those two words are really helpful for people to utilize, like have consideration and have that recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And there are simple places to start. That's not asking a lot. We're not like, cool, you need to go and learn about all of these people and what do they eat and how do they practice? Because a lot of that stuff is sacred. And it isn't our business. It isn't our business how what your rituals look like and what the ceremonies look like and the food and all of that, unless it's something that there is a willingness to share. And I absolutely get the mistrust of like we want to share, but also we don't, because the last time we shared, we pretty much got wiped out. So there is going to be that hesitation. So
Yeah.
yeah,
There's
coming from a place
also
of
there,
consideration is nicer.
yeah.
Mm.
There's also like people that come in to learn about our culture like as a hobby.
Mm. Mm.
It was just sort of disrespectful. And then there are what I call like performative days, like the performative days. Like
Yes.
as a Native American person in real life, that is like my husband and I both own our own businesses. We're like trying to make ends meet and pay for soccer and like all the things for the kids, like, right? So to see people like say on special months or days, like we should support Native Americans, but we're out here living the lifestyle and you are not spending your any extra time, energy, or thought in making sure that you are supporting Native Americans in your daily life, other than making a post or sharing a picture or like recognizing that a day exists. Like it doesn't fall farther than, oh, this is a day I'm going to publicly recognize that I know that this day exists. And now I'm going to go have Starbucks. And that's the end of it. Like, thanks, I thought of that. And then it doesn't roll around until next year. And it doesn't turn into actual support action, like whatever. It's just
Mm.
like, and then it might like I said, and then it might intrigue, and I'll be like, oh yeah, well, maybe I do want to learn a little bit about this, but it could be like a retreat, and then again they go back to their normal life. So I think that goes back to that consideration. Like it's not just a one-time thing. It's a forever thing. Like,
Mm.
it's like we're
It's an
people.
everyday.
We're people. Yeah. Like, and like I said, I know there's like a lot of trauma and a lot of things that we have collectively that probably make it feel worse than it actually is.
Yeah, of course. I
like
mean,
like like it's not that serious, Lauren, but that's kind of like part of the journey. And I can't speak, I mean, I really cannot speak for the younger generation, I
Mm.
really, they have their own way about living in this world and what they like and don't like and what they want and don't want. It's very different. And then the elders that are older, like in their, the boomers um, of our culture, they think wildly different too, because there's been such a stark difference in our experience of the time
Mm.
that we've been part of America. It's been very different experiences for all of us.
Yeah, and there's been so much has happened in such a short space of time as well.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, just trying to adjust and assimilate from just colonization, which was literally right here, and then now dealing with all this modern day stuff. You got all this weird technology. I mean, I know in the colonization episode you spoke about um, sometimes you drive down the street and you think like, what would it look like if we didn't have power lines on the land? What would life look like? So there's a whole lot of different layers for
I know. I get so sad
indigenous
when they
culture to adjust to.
I know. I get so sad when they mow the wildflowers on the side of
Mm.
the highway. Like that
Yeah.
kills me. I'm telling you, like this is gonna sound so like you're like I'm really a strong person, but there across the street from where I live, there was a giant pine tree and a giant
Hmm.
oak tree. I mean, giant. It had been here for a while. Like it was little grandfather plants, and they sold this. The city sold the land, and then a freaking developer bought it, and they went and they freaking tore them down.
Mm. No.
And it was so upsetting. It was so upsetting that my husband couldn't watch. He couldn't even like experiencing it was like heartbreaking.
Mm.
It was like it real and it sounds so cliche. It sounds so like like woo oh Native American bullshit, but it was so heartbreaking. It really did feel like I was losing a family member.
Yeah.
And things like that like really do break my heart. And but we don't have a choice but to witness progress.
Mm.
So
Yes.
so like every deer that's dead on the side of the road, like it's just so sad to me. Like it's just so sad. But I have to like put my big girl panties on and like go to work or like deal with life. But so that very much still is a reality for me. Like I do know that there are power lines everywhere, but I also like mind I kind of like mind blind them. I just have conditioned myself to just not see it as much because I think if I look too hard at things that it would just be very sad
Mm.
for me,
Yeah.
for my little family.
But I think that really speaks to the that disconnect of westernized society to nature and spirituality and living with the land. I mean, we all did at one stage. We all did live with the land. That's where we've all come from.
Yeah.
And there's cultures that still they're lucky enough to live that way. And then there's those that recently they've lost that. And so we go further and further back, and so the disconnect, especially in Western white culture, is so huge. So I mean, for me, if I had to watch a tree come down, that would devastate me. I would feel the same way as you, but that's because I've studied witchcraft and Wicca, and I've practiced, nature-based practices. I'm very connected to the land, but that's because I've made the effort to do that, to reconnect with that side. Um, and for the average person, they're just like, yeah, that's in the way. Let's take that out, And there's because we have such a huge disconnect in the Western world. And I think that also creates a disharmony between cultures here, because indigenous culture is like we're all about the land. Like the trees are like they're part of who we are. We're connected to them, because Western world is so disconnected. They don't feel that stuff anymore. They're just like it's a tree in the way. We need to take that out. So that also adds in disconnecting layers where we can't stop and have that again, the consideration and that recognition of
Mm-hmm.
what is that like for someone who has that deep-seated connection to witness a tree coming down and the impact of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I'm like, how hard is it to just plant another tree?
yeah,
Like, like if you're building a parking lot, like put two trees in it. If you take two down, like how hard is that?
replace them, move them if you can.
But you know, not everyone is the same. So.
But that's it. Um, let's chat about how media, education, and your kind of that casual language reinforces those narrow ideas of what Native America is and isn't.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm gonna start with the story of my son. So when he was little, we had him in a Montessori school, which was lovely. And it was like a homeschool co-op Montessori style. And when he was going to be close to turning 5, I was making the decision if I wanted to continue to homeschool him, if I wanted to put him in public school, if I wanted to put him in a charter school. Like, God, they don't tell you like how hard it is to make decisions as a parent because you're always like, don't screw this up. But I did a little bit of research to see like what the opportunities were for him. And I was like, if I don't explore them, then I'm just ignorant. So at least see what's going on. So there was a charter school in Spartanburg, and it was a lovely school, and it had like language immersion, and it had the school set up really well, and I was kind of excited, like this might be a good fit, a good answer, and I won't have to homeschool them every freaking day. But um, the day that so what they did was they did like tours. They had certain dates, and you pick a day and they'll bring you around and show you everything. The day of my tour, I went and they were bringing us around to the classes, and I look inside the freaking class, and they are teaching about Columbus.
Mm.
I was like, that's it. The answer is no.
Yeah.
The like right there, I'm like, just, literally sitting there watching them talk about Columbus discovering America on the day that I'm deciding whether to put my little Apache kid into school. And I was
Mm.
like, nope, I just can't do it. I just can't. I can't. It's what it
No.
felt like. Like it's no brainer. So then so I made that decision. And then I had to decide how I'm going to teach material to my kids, what's going to be important, and where I want to begin. So another thing when I was looking at curriculums, because you can like purchase different curriculums to teach that are like kits or whatever. And I was like, nope, I can't do any of these because they all start with Egypt and then skip over to Europe very quickly.
Mm.
And I'm thinking back and it's like, yeah, it's so Eurocentric the way we learn about history. Even when we talk about world history, we're really learning about Europe. I think we spent a week on like all of Africa, which is like Africa, the Middle East, Persia, you know, like a bleep of Asia, which is probably more than now than when I was a kid. And like very little about Latin America outside of like here's Central America and here's South America. And
Mm.
it was just like kind of like this brushed over thing with like this huge Eurocentric. And the people that are copying curriculum to teach their kids in America they're doing the same thing. It's still very Eurocentric. So I was like, okay, I'm teaching my kids about America first because I want them to know that they are the beginning of this land. And I want them to know
Mm.
that that this is here first, and we are, and like that whole thing of like we are still here. I wanted them to have a strong identity of who they were before they learned about being conquered. I didn't want them to learn that there was, you know, Egypt, Rome, a bunch of stuff happening in Europe, conquer the United States, and that's
Yes.
how it's kind of like presented to us. So that's how I decided on that. And then what they're learning and how they learn and how they're oriented. Like Montessori is like a really hands-on thing. And I think it's a lot of real life living kind of concepts. So I was definitely happy because I also need to make sure that my children can live in the world that actually exists, but also
Mm.
know where they came from. So balancing that tightrope is another layer of please don't screw my kids up, that I have to deal with. And then what's important, and then you kind of like crack the whole entire social structure and academic structure and all of the things that are set up, why they're set up. Do I want them to participate in these things? If they do or don't participate in them, can they be strong adults that are successful in their adult life? Can I take pieces of what everyone else is learning and living out of their life and still make them whole and happy and accomplished and Apache all at the same time? And we also don't live on our reservation or near our people because we were raised outside of it. We as adults, my husband and I have been back and we did live there for a while, but the kids have not. They know their family, they've come and visit, but they haven't been back there. And you know, part of like being connected but not connected is also another kind of you know, extra bonus points for like having to deal with that. So, you know, knowing who you are, knowing where you come from, knowing where your tribe is, knowing where you were born, because you know, my son was born in Arizona, and um, but not living that in every day and living an everyday life in a place that's not, you know, maybe where their ancestors lived, but if you go down farther enough down the line, it is. But then also not being um their their only influence is me and my husband as for Native American stuff, and then our immediate family, and that's it outside of what they learn out of books.
Mm.
So that's challenging too. And then when you do go into certain communities, not all, different depending on the community, you may or may not be welcomed if you haven't grown up on it.
Mm.
So that's another layer of it. So there's just so many things to think about and juggle. And I'm just like, well, as long as they're happy, that's really all I care about. But there is this extra, like I don't think that your average American worries about these things or thinks about
Mm.
them or it's a issue or whatever for their children. They get to walk outside and know that 95% of the people that they come in contact with, they probably have something in common.
Mm.
They probably can relate deeply to each other. And even though my husband and I are like well liked and part of the community and all of those things, the conversations that he and I have, like heart to hearts, are very different than a conversation that we would be able to have. And not because we're together, it's because we're both, our heart space, our heart is in the same place. Like we recognize and see things that other people don't see. Our awareness is just different. So that's why I say like we're you know, I could talk about pop culture and I know all the words to, you know, Wu-Tang Clan and like whatever, but then even with all of that, it's still different. And we even decided to have another kid because I was thinking like we both sat. I remember we both sat in the kitchen together, and I was like, if we're gonna have another kid, we should probably talk about it now. Like talk. Um, but we were like, yeah, when he and I when we leave this earth, we just didn't want my son to be alone because we felt like he wouldn't have anyone that understood him.
Hmm.
So we decided to have another kid because we knew that they would have each other.
Yes.
So, and those are just conversations and thoughts that never, people may or may not have, but probably not.
Probably not. No, and I don't think people have. And again, that comes down to awareness that there are people that do need to have those conversations and those extra layers of consideration that needs to go into just regular everyday life. Um, what has that experience been like in raising your children, um, especially in a world that for the most part doesn't recognize them as being Apache children or indigenous to this land?
Um, yeah, I think there's a few answers to that question. So, with Apollo being a boy and having long hair, always he had some challenges on the playground.
Mm,
Because other kids didn't know what they were seeing. They couldn't put it in their file. Like they couldn't pull from their mental file and say, I can identify this as X, Y, and Z.
mm,
So that was another thing I got to handle. And so what I did with him was I was, I went on, I my first instinct is to be like, get the heck away from my kid, like, right? But I was like, that's not good. Do not traumatize children. Um, so I decided to just ask them the question. I said, when they would be like, oh, are you a girl? Or, oh, whatever. If it was teasing or just being inquisitive, I would come up and I would say, hey, this is my son. We're Apache. We're Native American. Have you ever met a Native American before?
mm,
And introduce them to the concept if they hadn't been introduced. And most of the time they hadn't yet. And then when he became like around 9, 10 ish, 11, like around that age, then some of the kids would say, yeah, I've watched this show or I've seen this and I know about you guys. And so then they could connect the dots. Um, so that was kind of a learning curve for me. Like, how do I handle this? How do I handle this so that my son who's witnessing this doesn't feel less than or
mm,
doesn't feel like I'm angry, he needs to protect me or like whatever. Like I wanted it to be very a passive experience for him. And then when he got older, he mimicked what I did and he was like, I'm Apache, like my dad. My dad has long hair too. And so he found his own way to answer the question from hearing the way that I answered it. So that's one way. He still has really long hair. He still gets kind of question marks about things, but he definitely knows how to handle it better now. So I think that was the first part of your question. Was it the second part?
yeah, it's about the experience of raising your children in that society that doesn't know how to recognize
Oh yeah.
that
So
they're indigenous. Yeah.
yeah, so I do feel like we are very much a small unit of life. We stick close together, our little family, and we I mean, this could be because like of our specific personalities in life. Like we're strong Aries, like kind of on the out, rebellious people. Anyway, so we're just not the conformist kind of like type of people. And then on top of it, we're a different culture. So, um, but they hear our conversations and they are understand like how we talk and what we believe and what things are important to us and how we view the world out of our lens. So there's an impression that they have about the world based on how we look at it out of our lens, right? So there are things that are challenges for them making friends and stuff too. And we were part of a homeschool community. I found that during special months and holidays, like we were asked to come and talk about whatever, and I included the kids in it because I wanted them to be proud. But then again, I was like, are they using us?
Mm. Yep.
Do they really care about us, or are they using us because they think it would be cool to have a real Native American on Native American Day? So then
Yep.
I started protecting them from that because I didn't want them to be a pawn. So I don't know. Like, I'm doing my best out here. We are still homeschooled. We're not part of a big collective. That there are homeschool collectives. We kind of like travel in and out depending on what their interests are. Um, we spend a lot of time together. I take them with me to my networks, my meetings, my business stuff. They're included in everything that I do. We when we go on trips, they're with me. Like there's not a lot that we don't do without them.
Mm.
Um, they have they have really strong interests and they're not the same as everyone else's. So it is kind of hard for them to um maybe find and outside of sports find similarities because once they start opening their mouth and talking about the things that are interesting to them or things that we as parents have been like that's dumb, don't watch that, don't do that, don't be a part of that, and everyone else is out there at their age group doing those things that we are like, that's stupid. Don't spend your time and energy on those things. Spend it on these things. So they are, and then they're having a harder time to relate to their peers. So,
Mm.
um, but I feel like as they're still young, early teens, pre-nagers and teenagers. So I just I'm working on giving them a foundation and then letting them be whoever they want to be as adults, whatever that is. So I don't know what that's going to look like. I check in with them every once in a while. I think that especially my daughter, who's very social, wishes she had more friends, but it's just difficult. Like the parents have to get along for the kids to have strong relationships. And because I'm a working, homeschooling, very busy, don't have a lot of time to socialize, and then the people that I do socialize with aren't the typical American maybe. um like I think that might make it difficult for them.
Mm.
So but it's also their story and it's part of being who we are. So we can't, there's that whole thing of you can't, everything that you do has to be identified by who you are if you choose to, right? So if we're
Mm.
choosing to identify ourselves as Native Americans, that right there is going to separate us.
Mm.
And because we can't take that away from us. Because there's two discussions. Like there's the very cerebral, Freud, Nietzschean, whatever, brain, conscious identity thing that we can have about who we are. But for us, I think that the connection is still so strong that I don't know if we can really ever separate ourselves as a singular identity. I feel like a lot of people can walk around the world and feel like they're a person,
Mm.
and that's it. Like, I am a person and this is my personality and this is who I am, and everything that, like, they're the sun and then everything. And I think that's not true for us. I don't think that we can. I mean, sometimes I feel like my husband does, but I don't think that we can really feel like we are our own entity outside of anything else. And that's what I mean when I say, like, we're Apache. Like, it's really difficult to separate yourself, your identity, from who you are in that way. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? It's kind of like abstract.
It makes a lot of sense to me. And here I can see the such a huge difference between South Africa and America. So, I mean, both our countries are multicultural. We have huge diversity in the cultures. South Africa recognizes those cultures, barring the original Indigenous people. So South Africa still doesn't quite get it right. So there we have 12 official languages, with sign language being one of those. We have Heritage Day, and people are encouraged to, dress up in, if you're Zulu, if you're Xhosa, if you're Swazi, like, where are you from? What are your colors? What are your traditional outfits? And the white people get a little bit lost in there because they're like, well, we don't know what our culture is. Unless they're from Afrikaans culture, then obviously we know we're Dutch. But there is that sense of honoring who you are and that allowance to be who you are. And like we welcome that diversity, except for, of course, barring the original people. But here in America, there's like this huge resistance in just acknowledging that America is multicultural. I mean, you did ship over a whole lot of Africans, so I mean, Africa is part of the culture now. You had the indigenous cultures that were originally here, 500 different tribes. You got however many different cultures there. And then obviously the influx of different types of immigration.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's a very blinkered perspective to look at America as white culture. English should be the only language. No, like, how can you make English the only language when you have people that have lived here since, 2 or 3 generations, and they're German? German is their home language.
Mm-hmm.
So there's such a restriction in being allowed to be who you are, and that must feel so conflicting, because it's like the world um, needs me to conform and essentially be a white person, but I can't be, because I'm not. Like, my actual, like, DNA, like, you can't physically, you can't. Uh,
Right.
so it's like asking the impossible of entire nations of people, to be like, okay, cool, you all need to be white now. Like, biologically, I'm sorry, I can't. How would you like me to do that? There's no transformations for that. And as much as one can, adapt to, whatever white culture. I use those two words very loosely
I
together.
mean, I think it's
Uh,
American culture. I
yeah,
really do. And I,
yeah,
I do understand, like, how it came to be and
yeah,
why things are. And of course, like, I mean, we all get, if you're American, if you were born here, everyone gets swept up in the moment of, like, American greatness.
yeah,
And I know a lot of people come from other countries and they're like, what is with the American flags, like, everywhere?
yeah.
What the heck is going on here? And it's like, so there is this um thread of how America was built. It was built on fighting. It was built on conquering. It was built in a way that's different than um the way that the, the British kind of came in, or like it's just a little, it's different because, you know, it was fought different. Like the British came here, but not the government, the people came,
Yeah.
right? So, and then more immigration, early immigration, we'll call it immigration. I don't know what else to call it, like migration. So there were people here, and there was a very like loose connection with Britain. They might think it was stronger, but I think it was like really loose. It was just too far and too unorganized. And um, living here was really rough. And I think the people that came here first that were actually able to thrive here somehow were like, listen, we just overcame some real bullshit. Like, if you're going to come at me and ask me for anything, you're going to have to fight for it. And I think that um, history of we fought we fought the man and won. Like we fought Britain and won. So we can do whatever we want. And it just takes brute and tenacity to get anything that we need because that's what we're built on.
Mm.
And then that whole idea goes through like everything. Like that's how America keeps thriving. Like it's on like sheer will, right? Like, and you're not going to mess with me. I don't care what you say. Like the world could be falling down around us, but we're still like, we're going to be fine. We're going to figure this out and we're going to thrive somehow. And it might look like we're down now, but wait till tomorrow, we'll be up again. And I think that's just the collective story of modern America. So I understand that when they look at us, they're like, well, we fought you and we beat you too. Like you're no different. We beat the Brits. We bet, we purchased ourselves out of having, problems with France. We got the Spaniards out of here. Like you're just one of the many, and that's why we're here. And we fought for this and we won it, and now it's ours.
Mm.
So I can see that perspective.
Yeah.
um, and and that is the culture of America. And that if you've been here for generations, then you're part of that story of like, I had to live through famine and, economic downfall and all of these crazy things. Like I had to live through slavery. I had to live through these horrible, horrible things to thrive in this place and like bring it.
Mm.
So and that way it's like for us, like we're going to have to fight with the same type of tenacity for our seat at the table because everyone is fighting really hard to be here. And we were beaten down so recently, and not everyone did fight. A lot of us turned to escapism with drugs and alcohol and gave up. So it's like if you take it out of just the lens of just being, thinking as a native and really like zoom out to the macro and what table are we sitting at? Like we're here with a bunch of tough cookies. These people that came here came because they thought that they didn't have an opportunity or a chance anywhere else. And they had to fight to get here, and they had to fight to stay here, and they had to fight to become members and all of this other stuff. Like we don't think that we should have to fight that hard because we were here first, but maybe we do, maybe we do. And there's less of us. And so we're kind of like, we are trying to figure things out and find our footing and find our place. And then also find our strength. All of this, like everything's happening all at once. And because the cultures are not a unified culture, other than us being here. Like we all have to figure it out for ourselves. Like every tribe is different and every community is different and the people all of our leaders are different. Like all the leaders don't have a consensus
Mm.
on how things are. Our leaders are like worried about the people in the community in the state that they're living in and then in the broader country, like, you know, and their family members. Like the leader of our tribe is probably your cousin somehow. He's not just the guy that was elected. Like
Mm.
nobody gives a shit about Trump. He's not my uncle. But you know, the guy that's in charge of you know, the kids tribe is probably related to them somewhere.
Yes.
So it's a totally different, it's so different. Even that, like we had this conversation a little while ago. Like, I can't believe they have like a council and like a parliament basically. For
Mm.
if we look at the tribes, like a modern tribe is basically just this parliamentary looking thing where they have a council and it's set up like white people. Like, why are we setting up our governments the way that our enemies did it?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Isn't there, you know, maybe we need to look at this. Maybe we need to dismantle this. What does it mean if we don't? But then we have a relationship with the United States government. So there is kind of constraints on how you can be recognized as a nation. So there's
Mm.
just all of these, like, there's just so many. It's a spider web, you know.
It is. It's like huge, different layers. And I've seen that conversation come up quite a lot around, why are we doing like our things the way that white people do it? And I mean, from what I've studied in different some of the different indigenous cultures, forms of democracy were actually here, forms of government were here, and apparently they were some of the most efficient. So I mean, if anything, American culture could probably learn a whole lot from
Yeah.
that.
It's like, why are we
Uh,
regressing?
that's it. That's it. And I mean, for me, that fascinates me that there is that. And I mean, I can get it. I can get it because I've studied the history and I know how we've got to where we are. But that's still quite something that um, it's like settling for things that aren't yours. You know, we have to conform to more ways that just aren't ours, and that's not just here in the suburbs of the upstate. That's on the reservations. That's how the reservations are now run. And like you say, because there's that relationship with the U.S. government, it's like how much movability do we actually have as a people?
Mhm.
How much ownership can we actually take of ourselves and how we run ourselves and manage ourselves, without, this essentially a foreign government telling us this is how you have to do it.
Mhm.
It just compounds on really fucked up layers to have to work through, you know.
Yeah.
And then still trying to raise children in amongst all of that as well. It's like, how do you raise them? What do you teach them? What don't you teach them? Um, I think if I took my child to a school and they were teaching about Columbus, as a white person, I would have walked away. Columbus was a dick.
I'm
Uh,
like, it's 2020, whatever, right? I'm like, why are we still doing this?
yes, because he didn't discover anything; they discovered him. Um, let's chat about what non-Indigenous people um, often misunderstand about Indigenous culture, and what does um, respectful allyship actually look like? Like how can we develop better relationships with one another? And that's obviously a very big conversation, a very big question. And I know we don't always have the right answers, but I'd love to hear your views on that, on how you're feeling around that.
I don't know how I feel about it. I used to be really optimistic about things. So I come from Florida, which is a huge, South Florida specifically, which is a huge melting pot of people. And it is really open to celebrating each other's cultures
Hmm.
because your best friends, your classmates, somebody's from somewhere, you've walked into their house where their mother was cooking some kind of food that doesn't smell like your house. And that was normal. for me growing up. And then when I moved around the States, I noticed that it wasn't quite the same. But I went to Arizona and it was like there were hardly any African Americans there when I moved there, like at all. And it was like Phoenix, the city. And I just thought that was bizarre. But it wasn't mixed cultures, so I didn't have to navigate being around different cultures. I only had to navigate between a few.
Mm.
So then when I moved to South Carolina, I am still do not have my head around the way that people treat each other here because I don't understand. I literally do not understand the problem. I'm
Mm.
like, I don't understand the problem. Like, again, we're in 2020, whatever, and we're like acting like it's still, the 1950s in some ways. So I don't have an exact answer because it depends on the region and it depends on the culture and it depends on like so many things. And if you're like, I don't know, like if you're from Pakistan and you move to Arizona, like you're going to learn that there are Native Americans. If you're a Pakistan and you move to Michigan, you're going to think that America's just full of Arabs. Like you're not going to, so it really depends, where you're at. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I've had so many like wild experiences that I could just point into time. Like, when you get on the phone call with AT&T and you're like, "Hey, I need help," and you get someone from overseas and
Mm.
you're waiting, they're like, "Can you wait? We're going to check that out." And so, like, I'm a talker, obviously. So I'll just talk to anyone about anything. And I had the guy was from India, and I don't know how we started talking about our personal selves, but he was from India. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Indian too, but from the United States. Have you ever heard of us?" And he was like, he's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Native American. I was here before all of these Europeans came in. They thought they thought that they reached India, so they called us Indians." So, and he was like, "I didn't even know you guys existed."
Wow.
And so I was like, yeah, so that was an interesting conversation to have with somebody outside of the United States. And I have traveled. I've traveled to Europe, I've traveled to the Middle East, to the Mediterranean, to Turkey. I've been outside. I've never, ever been identified as a Native American outside either. And I'm usually identified by the accent of the language that I speak in their language.
Yeah.
Because they can't look at me and see anything that they can point their finger on.
Mm.
So they're looking for other cues. So when I open my mouth, they're like, "You might be from here." Because
Yeah.
there aren't any visual cues because they don't have any. And then what do they have? Hollywood,
Yeah.
if anything at all.
Mm.
So it's kind of a bizarre existence when you think about it, when you really like zoom out. It's not just like, I mean, let's be honest, like we're zooming out macro, like the whole world doesn't know we exist.
Mm. Yeah.
Most of the people on our own land doesn't know we exist. Most of the people in my own county doesn't know I exist. Most of the people in my own city, my own circle, my own whatever, don't even know it unless I offer that information to them.
Yes.
So that's crazy when you think about it like that. You know what I mean? It really is.
Mm.
And then it's a very awkward space for me to be in when I am the color I am. I'm a very, very light skinned Native American. me and a few of my cousins have been blessed with this melanin or lack of, right? But my son and my husband are much darker. So they could be identified as a person of color, where it's very difficult for me to be identified as a person of color.
Mm.
And then if I do identify myself as a person of color, then other people of color are like, what the hell are you talking about? You're so white passing that you should not be, you obviously don't have any problems. It must be easy for you because you're just so white passing. But then if
Mm.
you ask white people or other people of other cultures, they don't assume I'm white. They don't think I'm one of them. Latins don't think I'm Latin. White people don't think I'm white. You know what I mean? So,
Mm.
but people of color don't think I'm them either.
Yes.
So that's weird.
Kind of bordering into the realm of colorism, which is a word that I didn't even know existed until probably a
Yeah.
couple of months ago. I
And
was
that
like,
and
yes,
that
this
and
is the
that's
thing.
yeah, and colorism is for
Mm.
every single race. But like my daughter is light like me, but her features are more Asian. Like her eyes, her features are different than mine. She looks more like um, my husband's side of the family. So when I don't know what they're going to think of her as an adult, how she's going to be
Mm.
identified, how she's going to feel about being identified as that. And it's just an interesting space to live in where if you don't have a strong sense of who you are, then do you deserve to be in the room?
Mm. Yeah.
Because other people are going to say you don't. And you
Mm.
have to be strong enough to say, I do. And
Yes.
this is why. And I understand that you don't recognize that, but I recognize that for myself. And just because
Mm.
you don't accept it or recognize it doesn't mean it's not true.
Yes.
But I
Yeah.
do hesitate. Like there are a lot of like minority networking and minority this and minority opportunities and minority whatever. And then I'm like, should I go to that?
Mm.
What does minority mean? Does it mean to them what it means to me?
Mm. That was going to be my question. What do they mean by minority? Which minority?
Yeah, which minority? Is it a
Mm.
gender based? Is it a color based? Is it a community based? Like, what do they
Mm.
mean? Because I promise you, in any room, I am probably the most minority of minorities that there are
Yeah.
because of who I am. But that's my knowing. It's not their truth.
Mm.
So, and then it's like, how many times do you want to walk in a room and have to justify who you are? And I think about that for my children because I deal with it for myself.
Mm. And you've got the other layer of the term pretendians
Yeah.
is a thing, and also that's something a new concept for me. I hadn't come across that word again until this year, and I was like, that is a thing. Where
Yeah.
people are like literally being like, hey, like this is who I am. Like I have all the things to prove it, and I'm fighting for my place at the table. And then you have these people that like they're not from your culture, and they're like, oh no, but I am. Like if I'm understanding that wave correctly, that just
It is extremely problematic because it causes so many problems on so many levels.
mm.
So where it came from, I'm not exactly sure. It could have been something as simple as, a certain culture or race just trying to survive in a
Mm.
world that didn't like whatever culture or race they came from. And so this was an easy way for them to be able to live,
Yeah.
right? So
Mm.
that's my best guess on the healthy side. And then there's also people that understand that, oh, there are handouts, there are programs, there are whatever that I could take advantage of if I pretend I'm part of this community.
Mm.
And so they're just taking advantage of the help that was meant for us. they're taking from us because why not? Right? Like we're nobody anyway. Like who's gonna notice? Who's no one even knows what an Indian Native American looks like. So how do they know I'm not one? Right?
Yes.
I play one on TV. Like so there's that opportunistic probability that still exists, definitely. And then and yeah, it's been around for a while. Like people have started nonprofit 501(c)s that are names of tribes
Mm.
and able to funnel money into their tribe because it sounds like it's a native tribe, but it's really just a 501(c) organization.
Yeah.
So that's definitely not cool. But
Mm.
but then there are the people that, let's say they were trying to survive. They were just trying to survive. They identified as one of these communities. And that's the story they had, and that's the story they told their kids and their grandkids. And so their grandkids just don't know the difference.
Mm.
Maybe they were like what we call Black Irish or something, and they just were just trying to make it. They just needed to eat.
Mm.
So they died with this so that their kids would have an opportunity. Who knows?
Mm.
But then because of this, then we have the whole thing within our own communities of now, well, is blunt quantum still legit? Is it something that we should look at? What about disenrollment? What about if you're not, here? There was a huge, and I was like, I didn't even know this existed until I saw it on social media. But the Lumbee Nation was just federally recognized, and there was
Mm.
a huge, it upset a bunch of Native Americans a lot that they were being federally recognized, like a
Mm.
lot.
I
And
saw that.
they all have their own reasons why. And I'm not even going to pretend to know I know anything about it.
Mm.
But that was wild.
That.
Like, so now we're like turning on each other. Or
Mm.
are we? I don't know. Like, are we turning on each other? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's just a lot. And even like
It
I
is.
said, like I got my kids, they're my daughter's light. She doesn't live on the reservation. She lives outside here. When she grows up and she's beautiful and successful and whatever, let's say, because I can say what I want. How is she going to be perceived walking into her community? Is she
Mm.
going to be accepted? I don't know. Is she going to
Mm.
be accepted anywhere? I don't know.
That's it. It's. I mean, it's as it is trying to reestablish one's place in this weird society that literally been thrust upon you. And then still being judged on, oh, but you don't look indigenous, like you don't look like that. Um, and I mean, if I think of my parents, I mean, they grew up on the cowboy and Indian movies and the books. My dad and I were chatting a couple of months back, and he said to me like when I think about Native America, I think about the headdress and the loincloth and the whole thing. And he's like, I know that it's wildly disrespectful. I know that it's wildly like incorrect. I mean, my mother loved that I knew an Apache person. She was like, that's amazing. That's so fascinating. And I'm like, y'all are so uneducated. I was like, you need to educate yourselves some more. But they've grown up in that disconnect of Hollywood and all the books that they read. So that is all that they know. Um, when you were talking about the gentleman from India, like not knowing that you even existed in the first place,
Yeah.
that does it floors me.
Yeah, I'm like,
I
we're
mean,
named after you.
I mean, I suppose it's like me going to Southeast Asia and people being like, "Where are you from?" And I say Africa, and they're like, "But you're white." So it is. I mean, the world at large has so much educating to do for itself. And that's let's chat a bit about the responsibility of passing on, things like knowledge and identity. And those cultural values, like how does one bring all of that forward, and find place for that in this world that half the world's like you're an actual like in existence,
Yeah.
and then the other side is like, you know, you still live on the plains with the headdresses. It's like, no, you're the neighbors, and you know, the people down the street.
Right.
And
Well, them becoming adults is not that far away, but with technology and everything else, it really is. Like they could be living in a very different world than we're living in right now, 5 years from now, 6 years from now. So I'm, I guess my hope is that with the access to information that we have now, maybe it would be a little bit easier
mm,
for them. Because with all of the negative things, like we're also the type of people that are like, oh, that singer's Native American. Hell yeah, that's one of us. And like, oh, that successful whatever is Native American or was voted in or whatever. We're like, yeah, that's one of us. So there's like this weird thing that happens where we're also excited for when one wins, we all win, right?
yeah,
So that's kind of my hope for them. But I I really I as a parent, like what my job is to protect them, to love them, to give them a space to learn who they are, and then allow them to be who they're going to be.
yes,
So more than being like a soundboard and someone to comfort them as an adult, like I don't know what else I can do for them because I really do want them to have their own perception of their life, and that could be where they identify, you know, a lot with who they are, or it might be where they don't. I don't know what that's
yeah,
going to mean for them. So like my daughter's a ballerina. So the first prima ballerina was Maria Tallchief, who was a Native American. And so she knows about that history. She's got like a little t-shirt that says that. And I've shown her who she is, and she knows the history of the New York City Ballet, the American Ballet, and that she was like the muse for all of this style. So when we think of ballet, we think of it as very European, but American ballet actually was built on the energy of this dancer that happened to be Native American because her strength and her style allowed these moves to be performed where they weren't performed because the dancers weren't trained and didn't have the same type of strength. So even things that we don't think of as indigenous in America, like ballet, is influenced. American ballet is very much influenced. So I think that that current that just runs through being who you are and however you choose to live or identify or whatever, you're still going to be the Native American that did it. You're still going to be the Apache kid that did it, you know, or whatever
yes,
inherently. So you can't get away from it. So whatever they choose, however they choose to identify, whatever they choose to be, it's going to be that. And how it influences America or communities or whatever, like, I don't know. We'll see. And I think about my life, like, I know that I influence a lot of people passively. And it's not thought of like, it's not even thought of like, oh, Lauren made this, Lauren did this or whatever. But I know that my influence has helped and shaped and touched a lot of people in the community. And I think and community is so important to me because of who I am.
mm,
So I couldn't remove an accomplishment or anything from the fact that this is who I am.
mm,
So it's kind of like I for me anyways, I have a really loose brush for them because that's how I am. I think that it might be different for other people.
Mhm.
A lot of people really are like their job, like they are culture keepers. Like that's their orientation to the world. And
Mhm.
that's like their job on earth, and their job is to be like culture keepers. And so they probably wouldn't have such a loose interpretation like I do.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I think because of my station and how I came on this earth and everything, that I I wasn't born with an identity given to me. I I got to figure that out for myself, and that's a different experience than a lot of people have. So, and that's not my gift. That's not my medicine. My medicine is connected to culture, but it's not cultural. Does that make sense?
It does. It
Yeah.
does. It does
Okay.
make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense for me from the perspective of not fully knowing my culture. I didn't grow up in a specific culture. I mean, my mom is adopted, so we don't know. Unless I do a 23andMe, I'm not going to know. Um, and on my dad's side, we've got our full family history, and we go all the way back to 200 AD or something ridiculous in Scotland. Um, so I've always like had this connection to Celtic heritage and Scotland and that whole area, the landscape. It really like it sits inside of me, and I can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's that's probably why as a teenager I was drawn to studying witchcraft and Wicca and paganism and all these Celtic different traditions that fall there. Um, and I was like, why do I feel such a strong resonance with this? Or why do I identify with this so much? And then we got our family history from my dad's side. And I was like, oh, okay, that tracks. That
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense. So there's the encoded in the DNA and who we are. We do definitely have that sense of where we belong and how we fit into the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Whether we're born into the actual culture or not. I mean, I'm thousands of miles away from my homeland, essentially. Not knowing my mom's side of it either. So that does make a lot of sense. Where it's like, it's there deep in the depths of who you are, because for thousands and thousands of years that's who the people before you
Right.
were. So I think that you can feel that deep sense of connection and that deep sense to the culture, but I'm not gonna wander around and go and teach Celtic history, or Celtic culture, because I'm not educated enough on that. I know my lived experience and the books that I've read and the bit of history that I've studied, and that I can share. uh,
Right.
but I can't be someone who's like, cool, let me teach you about Celtic culture. Um,
Right.
I haven't
And
even been
there,
to Scotland.
yeah, and there are like they said, there are people that's what they do. Like that is their station. We have somebody in ours. I think she's still a professor. Um, but she dedicated her whole entire life to just understanding the culture and writing about it and talking about it and being vocal for us and everything. So I didn't have to, you know what I mean? So I really appreciate, I've never even met her in person, but I see her name and I know who she is and I know what she's done. Um, and I'm thankful that she did that again, so I don't have to. So we all have our own like place and space in our communities. But what I learned by was that I I I can't I'm not I can't separate myself from that. Like you said, even before you knew deep things, you already were. Like you already were it before you even knew it. So that understanding is like no matter what I do from this point forward, it is Apache. It just is because I am, like So a twist on Shakespeare, but um, so if you think you can separate the two, from my point of view, you can't. So just whatever I do, whether, like I said, whether you want to recognize it or not, like you are getting an Apache, whatever, an Apache artist, an Apache's whatever, like that's what you're getting because
Yeah.
I can't help it. I can't help myself.
It is, it's encoded in who you are.
Yeah.
And there is no separation to that. Um, as we close off, have you got a message for obviously non-Indigenous and also for the next generation, um, in and around this topic of like, hey, we are still here, we do still exist.
Well, that's a good question. I'm thinking so many things at the same time right now, so I'm trying to sort it out so I sound like I know what I'm talking about. Um, I mean, I feel like if you're watching this, then you're already resonating to it, and it's not it's not a obligation. So I can understand that. It would just be nice. And for the other generations, like I really feel like they have a difficult path. Um, they're seeing and being exposed to a lot without being rooted in a lot of things.
Mm,
Um, so I think for them, going within is going to be their best bet. I, there's so much influence out there, and because our community has been so splintered and we've lost so much. I think that word like rooted, we're really not, a lot of us just are not rooted really well into anything. And so much, so many generations have been trying to figure out like where are we now? Like what now? And we're
mm,
still in that phase of what now, what next, and a lot of things are moving us forward so fast that if we don't take the time to kind of stop and look inward and reflect and decide who we want to be without the influence of everything else around us, I think that is going to be the challenge for the next generation.
mm, mhm. Yeah.
Um, because I see what I've seen is complacency and or I've seen like the pendulum is swinging from left to right really far with us right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like trying to figure it out.
Mm,
It's still very like a very very moving thing. And that's why a lot of people do go back. We kind of like find a point in history that we can hold on to and then stay there or use that as our like jump off point
mm,
because everything outside of, after that has been very volatile. So I don't think there's an answer yet. I really, America is young. Our exposure to America is young. Our experience is different depending on what part of the United States you were in when things happened. There
mm,
were like phases of when cultures were and who it wasn't all British. Like Ours was the Spaniards first. Like that was our first. We had the French Indian Wars. We had Canada in all of these tribes that went from the border to the border, and they're like, "What are you talking about borders and governments? Like this is land, you know."
Yeah.
And so we all have our own very unique experience in different timelines of the story, and it's just so convoluted. It really is going to be an inside job. And I think as things kind of settle down, then you'll have the resurgence of more people that are able to come and be medicine people and more poets and more whatever because they're not trying so hard just to survive.
Mm. Yes.
So a lot of us are just trying to survive in the world. Like even me, like I feel like I'm a successful person, but I don't think that I've got the same kind of like ease or hand like ease in becoming successful as other people might have had. It's almost like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but it's definitely a different experience. So hopefully it'll be easier for my kids and easier for the next and the next. But who knows? Like, if I know anything, like the world is changing so rapidly. And if I pretend to know what's going to happen, I know, Lynn, you could just call me an idiot right now. Because that's not true at all, you know. But like I said, I think just giving them the best foundation possible and then being available. Like I feel like I'm not famous. Like people in my tribe or my family aren't like, go to Lauren, you should talk to her, she's got all this, you know, whatever. But people find me when they need me.
Yes.
And so that's kind of like how I move through things right now. Hopefully that'll kind of be easier later on where more people can find me that need me.
Mm.
And I think that'll happen eventually. But like I said, when you're trying to just survive and make it, and even me, like I would much rather not have to, you know, work uh, an American lifestyle or live the American lifestyle, but I need to survive. I live in it. So
Mm.
I have to play the game in so that I can give my kids the tools and the things that I need. But if you were to ask me, like, is the way that you're living now 100% the life that you would choose for yourself if you could wave a magic wand? And the answer would be no. Yeah. And I
There's
think
a
that's
lot of it.
true for a lot of people. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Uh, this has been an amazing conversation. I love that. I mean, when I asked you, what do you want to chat about? And you were like, we are still here. And I was like, yes, like, please can we have that conversation?
Yes.
And I mean, you've shed light on how little the world knows about Indigenous America, how little America knows about Indigenous America.
Yeah.
And I think that the more helpful takeaways is come from the perspective of be considerate, have that recognition, start there, like that's if you're asking like how the hell do I navigate this, how do I acknowledge or recognize or whatever, like consider the fact that there's a multitude of cultures on this land, and recognize that you don't have to know each and every one and their names and where they're from and their stories, but just that recognition of um, how much diversity is here, and that your next door neighbor may be Apache, your next door neighbor might be Cree, a there might be Viking. We don't know.
Mhm.
And if you don't know have the curiosity enough to ask in ways that are respectful. And I think if we can have more open dialogue like this, where it's like, let me know about your experience, let me understand your experience. And I mean, the experience for Indigenous America is so incredibly layered for so many different reasons. I mean, the entire existence that you've kind of been forced into really is in direct opposition to what Indigenous culture actually looks like and lives and functions in. So there's recognition and consideration to that as well, like, not just the diversity, but the experience for these people. They're getting up and going to jobs and taking their kids to school just like you, but they also have this huge like multitude of cultural difference to you. Like their entire way of life is different, their food is different. And for people to be more cognizant of that and embracing of that fact, I think will go a long way. Like just remove the blinkers. We're not in a white country. We're in a multicultural country. We have got multitude of different languages. If I've had people that I've gone into a Spanish store and they're speaking Spanish to one another and they've apologized to me, and I'm like, why are you apologizing for speaking your own language? Like, I love that that's cool that you speak a different language to me. That shows intelligence. I don't speak any other language. I got a little bit of broken Afrikaans, and maybe I can say hello in Zulu. But like English is the only language that I've really got. These people that have the capacity to hold multiple languages is a beautiful thing, to hold multiple facets of their own culture and integrating into a different culture. And I think for people to have that level of awareness of you can't just be like, oh, you live in America, you've got to assimilate to American culture. You've got to allow room for people to still be who they are and come from where they come from, with still integrating and adapting, but still allowing that heritage is really important. Yes, to more conversations like this, and yes, to more reinforcing the fact that Indigenous cultures are still here. They haven't gone. Like we didn't totally annihilate them. Like, thank God we didn't. So yeah, we do need to have more of these types of conversations, bring more of this awareness to people. In the next episode of Talks with the Elders, I'm going to be joined by Anna Seraphin. We're discussing restoring dignity and respect to spirituality and spiritual practices. That's going to be an incredibly deep conversation. Do tune in for that one next month. Lauren, a huge thank you for sharing your story, sharing about like this day-to-day life for you, and living in like, I'm this, but I'm also going to be that. And for bringing the realness and the authenticity to the conversation. I really do appreciate that.
Anytime. I like talking to you.
Yeah. I'm going to have you back on, of course. Lauren, thank you once again. And thank you everyone for being here, for tuning into this like crucial conversation. It really is an important conversation for us to have. And for staying present with a conversation like this, and to allow yourself to see more clearly like how one can be more conscious in living day-to-day life in amongst the diversity that we're in. Consideration and recognition. There's the two words to take away from today's episode. I will catch you all next month. Until then, keep recognizing and keep considering.